guys, just here with you. I'm going to talk now about the WWE Hall of Fame. It was on the other night. I was watching it there, 2020, and then it was two separate videos on the WWE Network. 2020 WWE Hall of Fame, and then the 2021 WWE Hall of Fame. Of course, last year, at the start of the pandemic and everything, they decided to drop it. They didn't bother showing it. They didn't have it, obviously. They didn't have the event. But this year, they done it in the Thunderdome, in the Thunderdome in Florida, where they have all their events and they have all the screens of people's faces and everything. They didn't bother with the audiences up until WrestleMania this year, where they're going to, of course, get the audience back in the stadium in Tampa. But going to talk a bit about each inductee into the Hall of Fame and just give my opinions on them going in and give my opinions on Hall of Fame in general and talk about each year. I'm going to do, first of all, the 2020 inductions and then talk about the 2021 inductions. First of all, going to start by naming the Legacy Hall of Fame, the ones that have been put into the Legacy. They don't really get a big segment of the show each. They don't get an on-stage announcement or anything. They're usually people that have passed away going to the Legacy Hall of Fame, but it was interesting to see a few ones that I think should have actually got a separate, segment. But Gary Hart, who was a massive star in Houston wrestling, down in WCCW in Texas, he of course was inducted into the Legacy wing of the Hall of Fame. Gary Hart, of course, was manager to numerous heels or bad guys in Texas, including the likes of, I think he managed the great Kabuki maybe at a stage when he came in from Japan. I think he managed people like maybe the Missing Link, people like that. A lot of the characters that would have been really kind of horrific type characters, but that would have been big, character wrestlers, but that wouldn't have much of a promo skill. They had a unique look, so he was the guy that was their mouthpiece. You know what I mean? Baron Michelle Leone was also an inductee. Also, you had Dr. Death Steve Williams, who I believe deserved a lot more than just a Legacy wing. He should have got his own induction because he was a modern era wrestler. He was around in the early days, or the NWA in the late 80s and early 90s WCW. He was around during the Attitude Era in WWE and WWF, and then he was around WCW before it closed. So I think he absolutely deserved a separate segment. Also, you have Brickhouse Brown, arguably deserved his own induction, I believe. Also, Ray the Crippler Stevens, massive star in AWA and in other territories in the 70s. Of course, Bobby the Brain Heenan was involved with him a lot in the AWA, I believe. Ray the Crippler Stevens deserved a induction himself, I would say. So yeah, that's the Legacy, not our inductees, 5 of them, and 2 or 3 of them definitely deserve their own segment to be inducted, I believe. Celebrity wing of the Hall of Fame, this is a massive one. I think he was very, very funny in any segment that he appeared on Monday Night Raw back in the early 90s, or when he appeared on different segments of Raw later on, or if he was appearing on different aspects of the wrestling. And of course, I believe he was at a WrestleMania as well, was he? Well, if he was or he wasn't. William Shatner, of course, well known as Captain Kirk in Star Trek, well known as T.J. Hooker in the TV series, well known as many different characters over the years, but especially known as Captain Kirk in Star Trek, obviously. But William Shatner, as the celebrity wing inductee, definitely very, very deserving this year, I believe. He was such a great character. 90 years of age. He just turned 90 there the other week, and he was a class act, William Shatner. Still going strong. He actually has done voiceovers for different stuff in wrestling, like in the, I think there was a documentary about the Performance Center in WWE, about all the young talents getting ready to go into the main roster, and Shatner done a voiceover of the whole documentary, which was excellent. He's done a lot of great Star Trek documentaries as well lately, and he still has that capturing voice, Also, Titus O'Neil gets the Warrior Award as part of the Hall of Fame this year, and he, of course, has done a lot for different stuff. For uh, he spoke out a lot and stuff like that about different things over the years, so he has been given the Warrior Award. Titus O'Neil, there you go. Jushin Thunder Liger, of course, famous Japanese star, has been going since the late 80s. Great legacy, that guy, and he has been a superstar in Japan over the years. He's went into WCW. He was in the very first Monday Nitro in 1995 when he took on Flying Brian Pillman. He was at Super Brawl 92, or the second Super Brawl, when he took on Brian Pillman as well. He's had so many great battles with Pillman, but he had so many great battles in both WCW and in New Japan and all the different Japanese promotions. But he's excellent as well in, of course, the WWE. He's made an appearance or two in WWE. I think he was in one of the NXT takeovers, and he was excellent in that as well. So yeah, he's been going strong for years, and he has been inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame also. Also, you've got the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, who has been an omission of the Hall of Fame for years, and it's been controversial. People have been saying, "Oh, the British Bulldog should be in the Hall of Fame without a doubt." It's kind of, it really should happen. So this year, he has been inducted into the Hall of Fame, which is, I think, very deserving. He was part of the WWF Golden Era back in the late 80s, early 90s, which was, he was very much one of the top stars as a tag team wrestler. Him and Dynamite Kid were probably one of the top tag teams of the mid to late 80s. And then, of course, as a singles competitor when he came back in 91, he was an Intercontinental title wrestler for like 2 years. And then he went to WCW and took on Vader and teamed with Sting and all for the world title and the tag team scene and everything, and for a couple of years. Then he came back to WWE, WWF, and he was a big part of the New Generation and Attitude Era storylines when they eventually formed Camp Cornette with Owen and Yokozuna and Owen and Vader and that. And then he went on, of course, to reform the bigger Hart Foundation with Bret Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, Owen Hart, and Flying Brian Pillman. And they had that whole America versus Canada feud, and the British Bulldog was, of course, married into Canada with the Harts and that, married to Hart's sister, and it was a big storyline in the mid to late 90s. And then, of course, he went back to WCW for a couple of years, and then there was a trapdoor thing when they were doing the War Games, and then, of course, he hurt his back in the trapdoor, and then he went on painkillers, and then it was downhill from there because he got into drugs and everything out of a painkiller addiction, basically, and he went back to WWE for a short time, and then he ended up dying a couple of years later. So he died at 42, 43, I believe. But it was such a great career, the British Bulldog, David White Smith, had, and very deserving of an inductee place as a Hall of Famer, I believe. Also, you had JBL, John Bradshaw Layfield. Bradshaw, of course, he originally came into WWE in 95 as Justin Hawk Bradshaw, and he, of course, teamed up with Farouk as Bradshaw. Before that, he teamed up with Barry Windham as one of the Blackjacks, the new Blackjacks. He was a great star then, of course, when he became JBL in 2004, with great feuds with the likes of Eddie Guerrero and The Undertaker, and such a great legacy JBL had then, becoming a main eventer. But then, of course, as a sideshow to his WWE tenure, he was, of course, also on Wall Street, and he had become, this is not storyline, he was actually on NBC talking about stocks and shares and stuff, and he has really made a side career for himself. I believe he married someone who was big, high on Wall Street or something, and JBL, John Bradshaw Layfield, one of the new members of the Hall of Fame also, which is pretty cool. Also, the Bella twins, Brie Bella, Nikki Bella, very popular for their reality TV shows. Nikki Bella, of course, was almost married to John Cena at a stage. Brie Bella married to Daniel Bryan, another great wrestler. But they, of course, had success in their own right as wrestlers in WWE. But they really branched off on the True Diva, or what is it? What's that name of that show? The Diva show, anyway. on E! Entertainment Channel, of course on WWE Network, and then of course they have their own show, the Bellas one as well, which is like a spin-off to the Divas one. I forget what they call the actual shows, but anyway, yeah, so very, very good for them. I wouldn't be into them type of shows, but the reality TV shows, I think they've actually went mainstream. A lot of people that aren't even into wrestling watch the Bellas on these reality TV shows. They rival the likes of the Kardashians or whatever, but yeah, probably deserving in a way, but I don't think they're any big deal, the Bella Twins. But anyway, NWO, Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and Sean Waltman, aka Six in the NWO, or he was X-Pac and DX. But he, of course, was the sixth member of the NWO when it came together in 1996. The NWO is, of course, the main event part of the Hall of Fame for the 2020 wing, or the 2020 inductions. Hulk Hogan, of course, Hollywood Hogan, became the third man when Nash and Hall went over to WCW in 96, and then it became a lot of people like Ted DiBiase, the Big Boss Man, or known as Big Bubba at that stage, Ray Traylor, and people like Virgil, who became Vincent in WCW, and all loads of these. Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, all these guys became members of the NWO because they jumped over from WWF to WCW, and then they made it look like it was an invasion of WWF guys in WCW, and it was really, really good storyline. And Hulk Hogan was the leader of the pack there, and that was, of course, he teamed up with Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and who were formerly Diesel and Razor Ramon, of course. But yeah, Six came into the fray. He lasted a year with the NWO. I think it's a bit of it shouldn't be him that's actually entering the NWO with Hogan, Nash, and Hall. I think it should be the Giant or Big Show. But he's recently jumped ship to AEW, so they won't add him into the induction probably because he's after jumping ship to AEW, WWE's current big rival in wrestling. But they chose Six. They could have chose any of the something like 40 NWO members from back in the day. I reckon either go with Hogan, Nash, and Hall, maybe add in Eric Bischoff, who was a big part of it, instead of Waltman, but they actually induct Bischoff in the 2021 Hall of Fame anyway, so he's getting an induction anyway. But yeah, I believe that Hogan, Nash, and Hall should have definitely been the main event of that Hall of Fame, but Sean Waltman as Six probably, if they're choosing 4 of the 40, I think I wouldn't choose Waltman as part of it. But he has all of these guys now 2-time Hall of Famers, and yeah, I think it's deserving. The NWO, big part of wrestling history, probably the most enjoyable storyline ever, in my opinion, in the great storylines of the 80s, 90s, 2000s. I think that was an excellent time in wrestling. Great time to be a wrestling fan, I have to say. It definitely was great stuff back in the day.
I never got beat, did I?
No.
Man, you know something?
Brand new to the card.
No. I think we all need to make another run. One more run. You know, WrestleMania's 2 nights. I'm hosting it with my main man, Titus. And I think after that first main event goes down, we'll see who the winner's there. And the next night, when that second main event goes down, you know, we should be waiting in the wings, guys. Put the NWO title, the real heavyweight title up, and teach everybody around here a lesson. But anyway, that's just wishful thinking. But what I'm here to say is this NWO is still as hot today as it was back then. And everybody knows NWO is for life. But now that we're in the WWE 220 Hall of Fame, it's a reality, brothers. The NWO is for life because these guys are just too sweet.
All right, gonna find the 2021 inductions now, and I'll talk a bit about them. By the way, Batista was meant to enter the Hall of Fame last year as well. That he actually had movie making commitments, so he did not. He chose to leave it to a later date to enter the Hall of Fame instead. So I wonder, was it to do with no crowd there? Maybe he was looking for a crowd in front of him while he was entering the Hall of Fame at a later date. I don't know, but definitely controversial anyway. Probably had a big money movie to make. He didn't want to go into the Hall of Fame. He would say he would do it another time when he was less committed to something. Maybe that was the reason. I don't know. Let's find the 2021 inductees, and go down through the list and give my opinions on them. Okay, so the inductees for the 2021 branch of the Hall of Fame Molly Holly, of course, former diva in WWE, former woman wrestler from back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and she became a big deal when she was one of the Holly cousins, and of course, she is probably a good one for the Hall of Fame because she came in as she was Miss Madness in WCW as part of Macho Man's Team Madness, and then she jumped ship to WWF and became Molly Holly. Good character, good wrestler, good in-ring wrestler. At the time, they were kind of going for women with looks and stuff, and it was Sable and Sunny and all them ones. But she brought a lot to the table when it comes to actual in-ring skills, so she was good at that time. Also, she probably would have fitted in well in the women's revolution with everything going on these days, with it being such a big in-ring product when it comes to that. So that would fit in well these days. Also, Hall of Fame inductee 2021 includes the Great Khali. The Great Khali is the inductee for 2021. Massive star in India. He came into WWE around 2006, I believe, and he won world titles. He was world champion. He was ECW champion, I believe. He was big feud with the Undertaker when he came in first. Standing about 7'3" or something. Massive big guy, and Indian. I remember I was in Dublin one time and I was chatting to a taxi driver who was Indian, and I happened to say, are you aware of the Great Khali? And he was saying, massive star in India. He was just singing his praises the whole taxi trip. I was like, geez, I wasn't expecting them to even know him because I thought, well, it's a niche audience, wrestling audience and all. But Khali has been in numerous movies. He's such a big, big name in India, and he's so much appreciated. WWE was making a joke of him the last 4 or 5 years of his tenure there, and now he's getting his induction into the Hall of Fame because it's such a big market in India, over 1 billion people in India, and they're massive, massive WWE following. So you probably have more people in India watching wrestling than you do in a lot of parts of the world, in America or anywhere, because it's such a big population, and Khali is such a big, big name over there. The Indian market is definitely saturated when it comes to Khali fans, I would say, so that's why they've inducted him into the Hall of Fame. Good money earner, good money maker. Also, the celebrity wing inductee for the Hall of Fame was Ozzy Osbourne. And of course, we know Ozzy Osbourne isn't too well lately, so good to see him getting induction. He, of course, was at WrestleMania 3. Was it WrestleMania 2 or 3, I believe it was. He was involved in one of the stories, or he was involved in one of the celebrity timekeeper or something like that, but he was definitely at WrestleMania in the early years, like around 86, 87, probably when he was at the height of his fame with Black Sabbath. But yeah, Ozzy Osbourne, inductee as on the celebrity wing of the WWE Hall of Fame. Also, you have the other big significant inductee would have to be, well, it's the third biggest, Rob Van Dam, or VD, of course, ECW fame, such a big star in ECW in the mid-90s. He had tryouts with WWF and WCW, but he was, of course, from Battle Creek, Michigan, but was part of that Philadelphia-based ECW, which is such a family-oriented product down there, and such a hardcore style, and he's, of course, more at home with that hardcore environment. So he was a big name there. Then he became part of WWE whenever ECW bought WWE, when WWE took over, all the guys from ECW went to WWE, and of course Rob Van Dam became one of the big deals then. As going forward, he won numerous titles. He was such a big star. Then he went to TNA then around 2009, 2010, and he done well in TNA as well, or Impact Wrestling, and went back to WWE at different times, and had a great career. I believe he's one of the top stars going in as well. His speech was pretty cool as well in the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Also going in was Eric Bischoff. Of course, he should have, I think, went in along with the NWO, but then again, he deserves his own spot as well, because he did, even though he was the mastermind behind Monday Nitro and WCW's success in the 90s, and when they went 83 weeks unbeaten in the ratings from WWF, But he definitely is doing a great podcast at the moment too with Conrad Thompson. You may recall he, of course, went into the WWE Hall of Fame this year, but he also, a big part of that was the fact that he was the best, the probably most successful GM or general manager of Monday Night Raw back in 2002, 2003, 2004. I think he lasted till about 2005 as the GM on and off, or actually might have lasted that long as a GM, and really, really was successful, and probably made a big part of Raw being more successful than SmackDown a lot of them years as well. So Eric Bischoff, big inductee there, and he has such great oratory when he speaks as well. He's such a great guy for speeches and stuff, so he was very fitting to be there as well. Kane was the main event inductee of 2021. He was inducted. It was announced on one of the shows, one of them interview shows the WWE does on the network, by The Undertaker. He announced it to Kane, and Kane was very chuffed at that. But on the actual ceremony, Kane was, he came out and he was inducted. And he done a great speech as well. He's, of course, now, at the moment, he is the governor, or sorry, not the governor, the mayor of Knox, Tennessee. Actually, another example of one of these, as some people would say, dumb wrestlers actually making a massive change in career and becoming very successful in politics. And of course, a lot of them become very successful, as we talk about JBL, in other aspects like Wall Street and stuff. And it's amazing that Jesse Ventura, of course, well known as the Body, Jesse Ventura in wrestling, Jesse the Body Ventura, but he actually went on to become he was, of course, a great actor, famous actor. He was also a Navy SEAL. He was a big politician. He was governor of Minnesota. So many accolades. And, he's often talked about even running for president. Never happened yet, but you never know. But, so there's an example. Kane there, for example, Glenn Jacobs, of course, his real name. But he was such a weird, horror-style character. And then all of a sudden he transitions, done a couple of movies, and then he transitioned into politics. Mayor of Tennessee, or mayor of Knox, Tennessee, Knox County, Tennessee, and such a massive achievement from somebody that a lot of people would downtrod just because they know nothing about the thing. You know what I mean? But that was the inductions into the 2021 Hall of Fame, and as I talked about before, the 2020 Hall of Fames. I always have a great enjoyment out of the WWE Hall of Fame ceremonies. It wasn't as good this year because there's a bit of a disconnect because there wasn't a real audience there. It was just all the screens with the people's faces on the screens. But I do think it's a bit of a disconnect, and I do think that it will be good. Tonight and tomorrow night is WrestleMania. I don't know if I'll watch much of it. I'm not mad into the modern era. I'm not very mad into the modern product, the new product, but I'll probably give it a wee watch and see what happens in the highlights or whatever. But I do think that Hulk Hogan actually is co-presenting WrestleMania, so that should be fun. I think that'll be interesting. See what happens. Him and Titus O'Neil, and that should be interesting. I do think that in general, the Hall of Fame this year, the way they done the two, was very good. A lot of enjoyment out of it, but not many more of the massive stars from back in the 90s and 2000s, or from even the 80s, that you could make big Hall of Fame classes with. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do going forward. Will they be just doing 2 or 3 a year or something now, because there's so many of the big names have already been inducted. But then again, probably is ones we haven't thought of that need to be still inducted from that golden era. Anyway, folks, it has been the Kyoster for CKTV, and I hope you enjoyed my little look at the Hall of Fame. Take it easy, folks. Bye-bye.